Hello and welcome to A Tribe Called Cars. My name is Ben Griffin and today we're going to be talking about the new Range Rover Evoque. Now this is a car I was lucky enough to drive in Athens, Greece at the media launch. I think there were a few different days. I was on the last one, so I landed about 6 PM and then had the embargo at 12 PM that night, which isn't ideal because I was absolutely shattered. Scientists have confirmed that I have the worst strain of the common cold ever, aka man flu, and I'm dying. But anyway, I'm gonna try and make this video. Apologies if, it's it's not as slick as usual. But anyway, we'll try. Now I think the main thing to note with this car is that it has been designed to be pretty easy to go from the old Evoque to the new one. In fact, I think it's only 1mm longer. So it's going to be as easy or difficult, depending on your driving, to park, to go around town as the old car. It's still got a lot of the off-roading goodness, although now, as well as hill descent control, which holds the car at a slow speed, you can kind of choose using a plus or minus button on the wheel how fast you go down a steep hill without losing traction. Now it's got a sort of cruise control equivalent for going up a hill. So all you have to do is steer and sort of pre-select or choose as you go along the speed at which it climbs up hills. And we did it on a very steep, very gravelly, rocky path, and it was fine. It's also got an indefinite hill hold system as well, so whereas before it would last for, it depends on the car, but most cars it's between 4 and 10 seconds or so. Now it will just hold until you give it enough revs that the car will not roll back. And it only went back a little bit, so it seems like an effective system. Looks-wise, it's also pretty damn similar too, and that's good and bad. It's quite a boxy car, but it is practical. It's around 2,000 litres of boot space with the rear seats down. It's 10% more boot space than the old car, so 591 litres with the rear seats up. That's pretty good. You can get your golf clubs in, your shopping in, and all that kind of stuff. Rather usefully, if you end up packing the car to the absolute rafters and you just have zero visibility, and the rear window is tiny as it is, but if you've got things stacked up so high that you can't see through said rear window, then fear not, because the car has a camera, which is also a screen. You just sort of flick the button at the bottom. That was a bit of a tongue twister. And then you can see through a rear-mounted camera. Now there's a sort of up and down button on the mirror, so you can adjust how high or low the camera view is, which is cool because your car is going to be a little bit higher up than your average saloon. So if you want to point it down, then you can see those cars more easily, or if you want to look further into the horizon, you can then point it up a little. Now you've also got something called ground view, which is the result of a concept we saw a few years ago. I wrote about it on Recombu. Basically, there's a camera under the car, 180-degree view one, that lets you see what's going on through the bonnet, and it shows you that image in a screen inside the car. So effectively, it's making the bonnet transparent. Now, it's not doing it in an augmented reality way. You are looking through a screen. It's not sort of projecting anything or whatever, but it's still rather cool. Cool because if you're going off-road and you come up to the top of a hill, it can be impossible to see over the bonnet. So there's a bit of a point as you transition from going up to either flat or down again, where you have no idea what's going on below your wheels. And you can sort of prejudge the steering before you get to that point. But using ground view, you can see what is happening, and so you know if you're going to drive off the edge of a cliff into something you shouldn't and can't get back out of, basically. In the real world, obviously, unless you live on a mountain or your kids go to school at a mountain school, you're not really going to use it too much. But if you're in, say, Tesco's car park, other supermarkets are obviously available, then you can use it to get into a tight space, make sure you don't drive over something, you can see if there's a trolley or someone's left something on the floor. So it's actually quite a clever idea. I genuinely think it's something that you'd get quite used to and you would miss if you didn't have it in another car. Now, another thing to note with the 2019 Evoque is that it's a sort of mild hybrid. Basically, there's an option to have a system that recovers energy, I think it's below 17 miles per hour. So essentially when you're coming to a halt, you're braking, that's energy that is otherwise wasted. So the car turns that back into power, which improves fuel economy. The best you should get from the Evoque, according to Jaguar Land Rover, is 50 miles per gallon. And to be fair, the car that we were in was meant to get mid 45s, and we were quite easily getting 30s. So I think with a bit of effort, it's going to be a reasonably efficient car, because it's not a small car, it's a compact SUV, but it's still an SUV, and it's still a rather boxy one at that. There will also be a full-on plug-in hybrid, although that is coming in 2020, so it's about 12 months from now. Obviously that will have a much larger battery, will be heavier, more expensive, but it will be able to drive on electric alone. So probably a range of, I don't know, depending on the battery size, 25 to 35 miles. Maybe they'll go bigger with the battery, I'm not sure, but obviously that would add to the cost. So, but it'll be enough to do quite a few journeys to get the milk because you forgot, without ever touching any combustion engine fuel. So that is pretty cool. Also means you can have CO2 emissions as low as 149 grams per kilometer, depending on the spec, of course. Bigger alloys, heavier stuff, more equipment obviously brings that down. Now, in terms of driving, I have to say that the older Evoque was a little more peppy, I guess is probably the right word, maybe. However, the car has transitioned from being a sort of mild off-roader. I think now the car is definitely more about being a mini Velar or Discovery Sport or whatever. It is a luxury cruiser, I think is the best description. I was actually in the car on my own for, I think, 6, 7, 8 hours on the second day. Maybe not quite that much, but it was a long time, a lot of driving. And it was remarkably comfortable. And it was actually kind of satisfying to drive. It rolls around a bit. Probably not the world's best handler. A little bit unpredictable. The steering adapts, and I find that can be inconsistent. But even then, when the roads are empty and you were gunning it, the only real issue that sort of prevented me from having a lot of fun was the gearbox, which, because there's only a normal and eco mode, there isn't one that holds the gears for long. So it is never particularly keen on dropping the gears, so when you put your foot down at the end of a corner, you can pull away quickly. It's a little bit reluctant. In fact, you almost have to accelerate as the corner starts, or certainly in the middle, and have any hope of leaving fast. But then it's an SUV, it's really not that essential. Presumably the P300 petrol version would be better in this regard. But anyway, the ZF9 Speed has been revised. It's decent, it works well enough that people will be happy. I think it's a car you just waft along in and enjoy the trip, and for that it's very comfortable. It helps too that the interior is insanely good compared with its predecessor. I think it's certainly up there with the XC40, not necessarily in terms of overall quality. The air vent plastic vibrated a little, for instance, but generally speaking, it all felt very sturdy. It was all silent. It looks really, really nice. It's kind of I-Pace-esque. In there, you've got the hardware temperature controls, which I really, really like. I think certain things should be a button and not a touchscreen. But the touchscreens are lovely to look at. Nice big buttons, fairly logical sort of tab-based menu system. Really, really easy to use, so that's cool. I was quite impressed with all that stuff. And depending on the car spec you go for, HSE being the top, unless you count the first edition, it's well spec'd. I mean, you can have a heated steering wheel, but you get a decent amount of stuff on the base Evoque model, and the S model you get a few extra bits. So if all you want to spend is the 31,600, really the only sacrifice is going to be the likes of leather and all-wheel drive, because the cheapest models are two-wheel drive. But then if you don't actually go off-road, is that really a problem? I personally don't think so, but that depends on you guys. It is nice to have the reassurance you could drive out of a muddy field if you needed to, but then at the end of the day, unless it's really bad, a two-wheel drive car is probably gonna be fine. Now, without banging on for too long, because I'm gonna do a full review where I'll tackle everything, this is just more of a, I've driven it, here's some stuff it's got, and you guys can sort of get a rough idea what to expect from the car and from my full review. But what I will say is that the image problem associated with the original Evoque is probably still going to be present. It's going to take a while for that to disappear, but based on first impressions, I think Jaguar Land Rover has done a lot to improve the car. It's comfortable, it's refined, it's smooth, it looks a little better, but it looks familiar. It's the same size, so it's no more or less difficult to get used to. It has more technology, it has Apple CarPlay, it has Android Auto. It can still go off-road, in fact it's potentially better. The Ingenium engines, of which there's a diesel and petrol, I think there's 7 configurations overall, ignoring the plug-in hybrid or including, I can't remember. So you're getting better efficiency, it's better on CO2. Ultimately, it is just a better car. So if, as the joke goes, your wife makes the decision to buy one, and you want a quiet life and you just let it happen, or whatever other stereotypes you want to go with, then I think you won't actually mind, because the new Evoque is a genuinely enjoyable car. I certainly came away thinking that potentially I'd be happy to own one. I'm not sure I'd actively want to buy one, but then it felt on a level with the Volvo XC40. In some ways it was actually better. So I think whatever happens in terms of how people perceive the car, it's probably going to sell another 800,000 or so units, just like its predecessor. So I think the best thing you can do, guys, is get used to seeing it around, because yeah, it's going to sell like hotcakes. Anyway guys, I've talked for a very long time, so thank you very much for watching and listening. If you made it this far, please stick around for the full review, please subscribe, please like, please hit the notification button, and all that stuff that you are probably sick and tired of hearing from other YouTubers. But unfortunately, we really do need people to watch these videos, otherwise we can't keep making them. So your support isn't just appreciated, it's kind of essential. And as from a selfish perspective, I would love to reach 1,000 subs as soon as possible. We're on the way, 667 at the time of recording this voiceover, so we're doing okay. Anyway guys, I hope you have a wonderful week. Please take care. My name is Ben Griffin. Bye.